1 week season.
1 week season, fam. La Familia, welcome back. It is Monday, June 24th. My name is Mike Johnson, M Johnson 86, as I am known in those DFS and Bestball streets. Welcome back. We are excited to be with you. We are pre-recording this. I had some schedule conflicts myself on Monday, but we are pre-recording this on Sunday night. Bring in my esteemed co-host, Billy Gableman, StatATL. Billy, welcome. How are we doing today?
Man, I've gone from a co-host, esteemed colleague to co-host.
There you go. There you go. Yep, the promotions keep coming. You know,
they keep coming. How's it going with you, my friend? Happy Sunday.
Good, good. Ton of rain here in Wisconsin this weekend. So yeah, there's just water everywhere. Had a couple tornadoes not near me, but yeah, a lot of inside time. So I got a lot of drafts done. Firing away at the $2 because it looks like that's going to fill in the next 10 to 14 days on drafters. Anybody joining us, of course, you can check out our stuff, oneweekseason.com. We have our Bestball Plus 2024 package. A lot of cool stuff going on there. We have a couple shows a week you can find here on YouTube or Twitter. And then all our private stuff, premium content for our subscribers on our Discord, on our website. A lot going on there. We've got more coming out too. So yeah, check that out. If you are new, again, we're going to be drafting on Drafters today, drafters.com. If you have not played on Drafters before, highly recommend it. In my opinion, it's the highest expected value best ball contest there are out there right now. And we have a promo code. If you use promo code OWS on your first time deposit, you get a 100% match up to $100. So put $100 on, you'd have $200 to play with, and can kind of go nuts from there. So just going to give that spiel. And with that, Billy, I'm going to bring your screen up. We're going to draft one with Billy today. What pick did we get here?
I'm sorry to say we've got the 12th, which I think both of us share the same opinion that it's the worst spot to be. Or
yeah,
at least it feels like the worst.
Yeah, especially on
that 3-4 turn. It's not great.
Yeah, so we'll make the best of it though. Looks like we're getting ready to get started there. So Billy, you have already maxed the $2 contest, correct?
Yep, I'm already maxed the $2. Looks like I'm on my 63rd here for the $15. So kind of planning on, outside of a couple of these that we're going to do between now and the season together on the Wake and Snake. I'm probably going to hold off on drafting for a couple of weeks. Kind of wait until probably August 1st or so.
Yeah. Well, you got some big things coming up. You're moving, so you got.
Yeah, I actually close on Tuesday, and then painters coming on Wednesday, and then we got the moving truck coming. Yeah, so it's a busy week. So this, and I do account management as a full-time job. So end of the month, end of a quarter for salespeople tends to be a busy week too. So.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and not only that, but there's some strategic reasoning that Bestball Plus subscribers who have listened to our training sessions would be aware of already regarding maybe taking a little break in that specific contest. So I'll be interested. For anybody who's not familiar, drafters, they have a $2 contest right now. It's $2 to enter. The lowest entry fee that you're going to find in Bestball right now. It's going to be 56,000 people when it is all said and done. It's at 46,000 entries so far. But for only $2, first prize is $20,000. Second prize is $10,000. And the top 10 make at least $1,000. So a pretty solid payout for such a small entry fee. And obviously you get good draft experience. Drafters is cumulative scoring, so you eliminate a lot of the luck aspects that are going on when you have those playoff weeks, and you're kind of just hoping things break right at the right time. A little more truth in reconciliation at the end of the drafters contest, where it's the best teams that win.
Yeah. And, Drafters has got that promo going on of, I think it's 100% deposit bonus up to $100. So you throw on $200, you get that extra 100, and you could max the contest for $200, get 150 teams.
Yeah. And this $2 one. And I'm curious because I do think it'll fill. Of course, we're drafting for their flagship contest, the $15 Drafters Million for this draft. But for that $2 contest, I am curious what drafters will do once the $2 fills. Will they fire up another one? Obviously, I think if they did the exact same structure, it would fill again. But I don't know. I'm sure there's a lot to consider because they want to fill this big one that we're drafting.
Yeah, so we're on the clock here. Again, I think that you and I have chatted kind of outside of the stream. I generally like to get a little bit different here than just kind of taking two off the so I'm going to scroll a little bit. I'm going to grab a San Francisco wide receiver here as well, mix up my bye weeks a little bit with a 9 and a 12, and take some guys that I think have some upside. And I think that this Drake London, Brandon Ayuk pairing is, I don't want to say completely unique, but probably pretty low owned just in general, not even just at the turn, but in general, I think this is a pairing you're not seeing a lot of.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's definitely, there's going to be, 2023 was unique. I guess I don't know if unique's the right word, but that Amon-Ra St. Brown, CeeDee Lamb pairing was so common at the 1-2 turn, picking at that spot. A lot of it had to do with on DraftKings and Underdog. The Lions and Cowboys played in Week 17, and everybody stresses that Week 17 correlation. So that, on those sites, they were even more commonly correlated. But then both of them put up, top 3 seasons at their position. And then just the way that worked out, it was such a common pairing that kind of proved optimal. But that's not always going to be the case, to your point. And I think we've talked about it a decent amount, but I think there's, kind of from where you picked from London through about, early to mid 3rd round, there's like a big tier of wide receivers that are all very close, I mean, you look at, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, who are both probably going to go here at the 2-3 turn. Each of those guys is probably a Tyreek Hill or AJ Brown significant amount of time missed away from being, a top 5-6 type guy. So, and it's the NFL. Every year there's like a litany of things that happen. That's kind of crazy. So I did throw it out to our premium subscribers, our Discord, just questions that they had, people they wanted us to talk about this week. And one of the things that came up, Mike Evans just went off the board, and somebody wanted to know just our thoughts on the Tampa Bay wide receivers. So I guess I'll let you start. Do you have any thoughts on that situation, Evans, Godwin, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'll cover all of Tampa just for fun. I'm kind of avoiding both of their running backs in drafts just because of how inefficient they were last year. Again, obviously, Bucky Irving is a rookie, so we don't really know there. I feel like if I'm taking a shot, I'm taking a shot there just because he's so much cheaper in terms of draft capital. You got to get there. At the wide receiver, I'm not taking any. I don't think I've taken Godwin once in a draft. He's just not my style. I think around where he goes, there are a few guys before and after that I personally, again, we're not going to get too player takey, that I just think have so much higher upside. I do like Mike Evans. Candidly, I considered Mike Evans at 13 as part of this, 12-13 back-to-back pairing. He's a guy that I think has top 10 wide receiver upside. I don't think that you have that potential with Chris Godwin. That's just not the type of routes he runs. It's not really targeted much in the red zone. He's kind of more of a Deontay Johnson, more of a floor than a ceiling guy for me. And then the rookies, I like taking shots on them at, in the 190s and the 200s.
McMillan?
Yeah, McMillan.
Gotcha.
Now we're kind of back up on the clock again here. If he falls, I'm going to take Kyron Williams for sure. Mm-hmm. If not, I'm probably going back-to-back wide receivers. You know who one of them is going to be.
There it is.
So for me, I think a lot of times I feel like I'm at a slight disadvantage at the 12 spot. Again, nothing that you can really do there. So for me, I try to make a sort of conscious effort to maximize buys and give guys that I think have good high end potential. So London, Ayuk, Amari Cooper, Terry McLaurin, all 4 different bye weeks. I don't know how important that is. It's just something that I don't mind kind of being a little different at.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I feel like you could take Laporta or Kelsey at that turn. I don't know. I feel like I'm just as happy to grab a tight end in the 60, 61 range or the 84, 85 range, or even later and not feel like I'm taking that much of a bath, or that much of a decrease in the value.
Yeah, it'll be the tight end position, how that plays out at the top. It's kind of going to be one of those inflection points I've talked about where I don't remember a year for a long time. Obviously we had Kelsey and before that Gronkowski for, going way back. I don't remember where the first tight ends off the board were not going until this late, the late 3rd or early 4th round. There's always
it was a first round pick last year, wasn't it?
Yeah. And so it's just it's such a unique situation as far as, what that means for the rest of it, because if Kelsey and Laporta, I guess if one of them or if any of these next guys after them, Laporta actually, wow, that's pretty late for him. But if Kincaid, Andrews, McBride, any of those guys that are going in the late 4th to early 5th, basically if one of those guys separates, that's going to be that's going to be the difference for fantasy and a lot of different formats. So yeah, let's see what other. Malik Neighbors. Where did he go in this one? It's kind of small for me. Did he go?
He went 15th overall. Not a spot I would ever personally consider him, but that's interesting. I feel like I've seen him go in the 4th round. In drafts I did yesterday.
He went early 4th a couple times, and we've talked about this on previous episodes where a guy turns his ankle, and the coach is like, well, it's June 10th, go sit out. Mm-hmm. And then he gets the red mark on his name on the app when people are drafting, and there isn't an injury report and it's not in season. So, all of a sudden a guy drops around in drafts. And I think that probably happened there with him. We've seen it happen with Michael Pittman. And it's kind of just just basically buy the dip, right? Just buy the dip every time because, when we're in June into early July, it's like there's so much time. I mean, we still have well over 2 months before real NFL football gets played. But yeah, Neighbors at 15, that's pretty wild. It's kind of you took Ayuk looking for like a unique pairing. Maybe that's what
Spencer was doing. It's only his 7th draft though, so
yeah. But the issue with that is, and I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on strategy, but we'll give the people a little taste. But as a guy like Neighbors, there's not much value in doing that. If that's the reason he did it, was thinking like, oh, this will be somewhat unique, because there's a bunch of teams out there already that have been drafted with Neighbors
in the 3rd or the 4th.
They have Wilson that got Neighbors in the 3rd, or like we talked about when he fell to the early 4th. So at a big disadvantage, especially in a contest like this where you're competing against every single other team. You're not just in those other contests, you're just competing within your pod. And then it's like random. It's like you might not even see any of those teams that got, that guy a round or 2 later, as you go through the playoffs. So
I feel like Drake London basically goes 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, like in this, the back half of the draft every time. And Ayuk is basically going late 2nd, early 3rd every time.
Basically, I've always seen Ayuk go like 16 to like 28.
Mm-hmm.
All right, you got 2 here.
I'm going to reach a little for a Rashee Rice, and I'm going to pair him with Mahomes.
I like that.
I know that some of the Best Ball Plus subscribers have heard about stacking and our thoughts on it just in general. To me, I didn't really mind this. I think Rashee Rice, I think his ADP is somewhere around 64. So, grabbing him at the 60, 61 turn, not really a reach. And I don't mind having a little bit
later than that. I think he's like 68, 69, but I still think I like him a lot on this roster because those first 4 guys, and this is how many drafts I've been doing. I know all their buys just like by heart.
Me too. My wife thinks it's the funniest thing ever.
12, 9, 10, 14 for those first 4 buys. So you think about Rice, the reason he's being drafted in the 6th or 7th round in most of these drafts is because everyone expects him to miss at least 4 to 6 games, possibly 8 to 10. But when you think about this roster, you've got 4 kind of stud type wideouts to start. And then you add Rice to it. And all those wideouts have week 9 or later buys. So even if Rice with a week 6 bye, say he gets a 6-week suspension, he's back by week 8, and he's, should be full steam ahead when those other guys are missing. So kind of complements the rest of what you're doing nicely. So I think, taking him a little before his ADP there is fine. And then obviously Mahomes, the QB silo and all that the Best Ball Plus subscribers know about. You don't have to put any red on the board for a while now.
Yep. Yeah, it's interesting. I think we were talking about just kind of draft positions, and so just totally random. But I do play other sports of best ball, or even just like the playoff contests and stuff like that. Whereas I know you're not a big hockey guy, but Stanley Cup Final Game 7 is tomorrow. And basically in the fantasy hockey, like playoff best ball contest, I know you're not a big hockey guy, but you live in a hockey country, hockey city, hockey state. So like Connor McDavid, first overall in every contest. And then when you got back to like the 12-13 turn, like basically Leon Draisaitl was taken there to pair with him every time. Those 2 are like the top 2 point producers in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So like if you didn't have the first overall pick, like it was really impossible to basically make it this far. So, and honestly, the same thing kind of happened in like the best ball for the playoffs for NFL last year. Like Christian McCaffrey was basically the nuts. And like if you didn't pick first, like you just couldn't win the contest.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Like, I don't know that that's going to be the case this year, because there's not even a consensus first overall pick. I've seen McCaffrey go plenty. I've seen Lamb go plenty. I've seen Saquon Barkley go plenty if I'm in a draft with Eagles with 4 Z's.
Did you play any drafters playoff best ball last year?
I did not.
Okay. Because that's also cumulative scoring.
So okay.
Super
totally different theory.
Yeah, like obviously I know you took first in one of the mittens, I believe.
Yeah, the original mitten.
Which was awesome. But obviously, like, we can do some of these hopefully heading into when that time comes late in the season, where playoff best ball is coming around. But it's totally different in playoff.
Totally different strategy.
When you're not thinking about like advancing, like it's the whole cumulative thing. So that was actually I was in pretty good position. I almost certainly, I think, would have had like a top 5-ish finish if the Lions hadn't blown that game. Because I had a lineup that had 3 Chiefs, and it had like all the Lions because like Laporta was going like in the last round because he had that knee injury. Yeah, all right, we got 2 here. What are we doing?
I'm probably gonna double tap running back is what I'm thinking.
Okay.
For me, I'm kind of debating if I'm just going both at the top of the board. I think that's probably where I'm gonna go. I'm definitely taking David Montgomery. I got a sweet spot for him. I know he was on your 7th place roster last year, so that's a guy who's near and dear to your heart.
Mara was too.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you've said that. I'm going to go there a lot. For me, like I've been looking at my exposures. I know you've talked about that in some of your training. Zach Moss is my highest exposure at any position, so we can avoid him on this roster.
Yeah. So the undrafters, so you can see your player exposures, and then the other thing that I think is pretty cool is that you can see. We got time, so I'm gonna remove yours. I'm gonna share mine quick.
I'll let you know when we're coming back up on.
Yeah. So I have mine up. You guys can see it, right? So It's pretty cool on the exposures. So you can see how many times you've drafted a player, the amount of entry fees. This is for all NFL. But then the other thing you can do is you can see your ADP, the average draft position that you got the player at, versus what their current average draft position is. So that's kind of a neat feature where you can kind of see your closing line value, like we like to talk about and stuff. For guys you're early on, that sort of thing. Just another. I love the interface on drafters, so just wanted to share another positive thing about that.
There's so many things that you can do with it. If you really want to get into the weeds, they do provide a good amount of detail. So,
yeah. So we talked about Neighbors before and how he was moving around. Do you have any specific thoughts on him as a player, or do you just kind of you'll take him if he falls a little bit past ADP and it's a unique combo sort of deal?
Yeah, I think that he's a guy that I don't want to say field is probably like right around 8% or 9%, like basically,
8.3. Yeah.
8.3. Like I'll probably be close to that, maybe a little under. Like I'm going to have some exposure to him, just because I'm not afraid to take him. Again, I don't want to be too player takey, but I'm never taking him at 15. I think that you're completely drafted at that point. Like he has no upside. Like that. That is him having his top end season. That's a Puka Nacua season from last year where you're taking him at 15th overall.
Yeah.
Happy to grab him in the 3rd or 4th round. That's totally fine. I won't be taking him at the front half of the 2nd round. What about yourself? You find yourself taking him a good bit, or where do you stand on it?
Yeah, I mean, Bestball Plus subscribers, I talked a little bit about some of my process as far as my early round selections and how I focus a little bit more on like combinations of players that I have than specific individual players. So, I mean, I'll definitely have him. He's not like a priority. Like, I think he's going to smash, but I also think he's probably talented enough and has a low enough amount of competition that it's going to be hard for him not to have a pretty good season. So, you know, I'm optimistic on him. I think I probably like him more. So I don't really do much on underdog except for like the snapshot contest. I'll throw a bunch of slow drafts in, but I am maxing out the DraftKings contest, and on there I like him a lot more because rookie wide receiver, good chance he kind of takes off at the end of the year.
Yeah. So on the clock here, good on QB for sure. Tight end for me, no one I want to grab at this spot. So probably leaning one wide receiver, one running back. For me, I'm gonna probably go Jerome Ford here. Just again, spacing out my buys a little on running backs for my first couple. We're gonna see if there's anyone else at running back I really like here. Probably not. Probably go grab another wide receiver. Considering, I'll go top of the board again. I'll take Brandon Cooks. I feel like I've got a strong enough top end of the board where I can kind of play for a little bit more Brandon Cooks spike weeks. He's kind of more of like a weekly winners type play personally, but he'll have some usable weeks. He'll have some good scores. Just a lot of them will be duds, but that's okay. He's not my wide receiver 1. He's my wide receiver 6.
Yeah, definitely. And then we had another question about if he hasn't gone, he's about to go. Blake Corum, the Rams running back situation. You mentioned you were considering Kyren Williams at the 3-4 turn. Corum about to go here. Pretty much always goes in about the 10th round.
10th, 11th. Yep, agreed.
So, I guess how are you approaching those guys? Do you have any thoughts on that backfield, how you think it shakes out? I have my thoughts. I'll let you go first, and then I'll share mine.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be hard for him to have more than, let's say, like a 30 or 35, 65 type split, just because of how efficient, unless there's an injury from Kyren Williams, which he was injured for half the season last year. If he doesn't get injured, he was just so efficient, was a good at pass protection. Like I find it hard that he's going to overtake Kyren Williams. I think he's at best he's a change of pace unless there's an injury. I don't think that that's the case in some of the other backfields that we've talked about on the Tuesday trainings that you've done, where it's probably much more of a split backfield. Like, to me, this is Kyren's job to lose. But then again, like, you kind of thought that last year with Cam Akers, and you kind of needed Kyren Williams to be a top 50, top 100 team last year. I mean, he wasn't the only guy you needed, but I know you talked about some of the guys you kind of had to have to be a top 0.1% roster last year.
Yeah, and I think generally my assessment of it's about the same. I think Kyren, I think he probably won't see quite the same like excessive workload, especially for like the first 2/3 of the season. I think that they'll try to be somewhat smart with him, but I also think that like they're going to lean on the guy they trust. And he's going to be like the man, where Corum's going to be like a, maybe a 20% type guy, like an 80-20 type situation. McVay's always liked using a featured back. I think where Corum gets interesting is if Williams ever misses time, right? You know, I think Williams missed 6 games in the middle of last year with that high ankle sprain. He's had like foot and ankle issues, you know, the past like 3 or 4 years, kind of off and on. So if he misses that kind of time again, I mean, during that stretch, you got to think Corum, like he has the pedigree. He can handle a big workload. I mean, he's very talented. So you got to think he's like a top 10 type back for whenever Kyron Williams is out. Because Corum then doesn't have to deal with Blake Corum. Like he doesn't have like a second capable guy, maybe, you know, siphoning off a few touches here and there. So, you know, that Rams backfield, obviously just wildly valuable.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. All right, we're on the clock again. We've got quarterback, 3 running backs, 6 wide receivers. I think for sure I want to take at least 1 running back here. Not going to consider quarterback just yet. 5, 12, 10. I think I'm going to reach here and grab Rico Dowdle. I like his upside. I do. Again, I know it's not that big of a deal. I do like skipping the bye weeks if I'm only going to take 5 or 6 running backs. Let's take a look at the wide receivers. Yeah, I might go Josh Downs here. Tight end. I'm willing to wait a little bit on tight end. I'm going to grab Josh Downs here.
All right, there you go.
So coming out 1-4-7-0 so far.
Gotcha. So, and you got Dowdle and Cooks. You got a couple Cowboys on the roster there.
Yeah.
We kind of skipped over. Where did Brock Bowers go on here?
Brock Bowers went really early. He's a guy that I personally have taken some shares for. Maybe it's just my UGA bias, but I'm never taking him in the 7th round. That to me, that's kind of too early to grab him there. I think there's a legit possibility for Spencer over here that Bowers would have been available at 106 2 rounds later.
Yeah, his current ADP is 97, so definitely got to think that next. You know, he took him at what pick was that? 82.
82.
So I mean, for sure would have been there at 87.
At 87 for sure.
Yeah, so you know, I personally, I guess, you know, the question was more about just like what our thoughts on him are. You know, I think he's obviously like a really hyped, high pedigree tight end prospect. I think some of the concerns are he went somewhere where they just drafted Michael Mayer in the 2nd round last year. They have Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers. And, you know, it's kind of similar to like when Kyle Pitts came out and he went to the Falcons with Arthur Smith. And they're so run heavy that he, you know, his rookie year, he actually put up 1,000 yards, but it just was like, I think he played like every game. And he never had those. Everybody was expecting this like flashy top 5 pick to, you know, kind of blow the doors off and have some huge games. And it never really happened. I lost a lot of DFS money that year. I still remember week 1, he was like $4,200 or $4,400 on DraftKings. And I just shoved him in every lineup.
I'm all in.
So yeah, I mean, I think he's a guy that you kind of just have to take some blind shots on though, because you know, he has that talent and that pedigree where, you know, it wouldn't take that much for, you know, I mean, Devontae Adams is obviously really good, but he's like 31, 32 now. And he, you know, if he misses any time, you know, Jacoby Myers and Michael Mayer aren't like alphas. Like he could be, you know, he could be a big part of the, you know, what we see at the tight end position, kind of what we were talking about before. He could jump into that top group when we're talking about the tight end position next year. So definitely a guy that sometimes it's hard to pull the trigger on, but because we have our kind of our biases and what on paper it looks like very clearly is the case. But I think sometimes those high pedigree, super talented players, you just gotta take a few shots on, just because it's the NFL.
Yeah.
Nothing. You're never gonna have a season where everything just kind of goes out as it should or as projected. So about to get two more here.
The guy I wanted just went off the board, but that's okay. If I do that, what am I doing with him? I'm going to double tap tight end.
All right. Hawkinson.
Yeah, I mean, Hawkinson kind of best on the board at that point, likely going to miss probably through his week 6 bye, is kind of what they're projecting. So definitely need probably at least 3 tight ends on this roster. Just kind of thinking the next couple of rounds. I know we're in the 14th, so I've got 6 picks left to go.
Yeah. So
I was trying to think through, even in the fast draft. I was just saying, even in the fast drafts, obviously the slow, as you see, I got a bunch of them going, but even in the fast drafts, I try to kind of think ahead of, okay, where do I need to go? Who might be available down here in the 180s? Do I need to take a quarterback here? Certainly when you're, in the 11, 12 or the 1, 2, when you're kind of on the ends where you've got 20 picks between your guys, you really got to be strategic. You got to be thinking about, when you're in the middle, the 6, 7 range, you're picking every 10, 12 picks. So, a lot of times it's easier
out of hand between your picks. Yeah. But when you're within the first, second, or third on either end, once you make that second pick and then, you're waiting 16 to 22 picks before you pick again. If you decide to wait on a position, yeah, there could be like 10 of them gone.
Yeah, you're rolling the dice. You're hoping. You're staring at that guy. Oh, you got 2 QBs already. Don't you dare take that third.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Yeah, that's certainly how I find myself doing it. What I just realized, even though I'm 200 drafts in, there's a chat feature. You could you could.
It's funny. They never used to have that, or at least I don't think they did. And then this year, there's been a couple where I saw like people like cussing other people out.
How you fucker?
And I'm just laughing because I never even knew it was there. So I'm just thinking to myself, like,
no one sees it.
Like you're just yelling. Yeah, you're yelling at a cloud, bud.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm glad that more people don't know it, because I feel like it's probably a feature that they probably should do away with, in my opinion.
So I get the taking the 2 tight ends. I don't have any qualms with that. One guy I was going to suggest when you were clicking around when you were on the clock, though, Tyler Algier, was going to throw him your way. I kind of like him. So I was thinking about it today because I was in a draft and I did this, and I actually did it. I had London and Pitts. And I took Algier, and my thought process there is for London and Pitts, if they hit like their ceiling outcomes, if either of them individually or both have like a really good season,
it's probably because Bijan has gotten hurt.
Well, right, because either the Falcons' offense is just like dominant, or Bijan misses time, because he's going to have like you got to expect him to have like a 18% target share. And where Algier he's not the same pass catcher. He's not going to be involved in that way. So that's where I think if Bijan were to miss time, that's one of the scenarios where you end up with London having like a 30% target share and Pitts with like a 22 to 24%, where they're like kind of dominant at their positions. So yeah, that's just wanted to throw that out there.
You know, it's interesting. I know we don't want to talk too much strategy on this. I think the common thought would be on a roster like that, if you had Pitts and you had London, that you'd want to potentially take that you'd want to take Cousins on that roster. Just thinking, I'll wait on quarterback and take Cousins on that roster. And while that makes sense, I don't know that I agree with it, and we'll talk through that in just a second. Am I going to take J.K. Dobbins? No. I'm going to grab here and take Roschon Johnson. And then I do think I probably want to grab a QB at this point. I could wait for Carr and hope that he's back. He's got a week 12 bye. I've got Kamara already. Yeah, I'm going to grab Derek Carr here.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So back to my thought on the Falcons. I think that if you're thinking that situation, you probably are like, well, I probably need to take Kirk Cousins. He's a late quarterback. He's probably going to have at least a decent year. But I think where Kirk Cousins generally goes, kind of in this 13th, 14th round, Best Ball Plus subscribers will kind of know who the type of guys that you want to be pairing him with and rounds and things like that. But to me, I think you look at the player type that Kirk Cousins is as, more of like a pocket QB. And even if those guys are having good seasons, I mean, you take a look at it last year, and Amon-Ra, St. Brown, and Laporta both had excellent seasons for the Lions last year. But Jared Goff still was just like a very mediocre, middle of the pack scoring quarterback. Like, I probably shouldn't have the actual stats that I'm quoting here. So maybe you on a different screen can tell me where he finished last year in terms of fantasy scoring, Mike. Fantasy.
Yeah. Did I talk about this on a training session, or I don't remember. I talked about this at some point.
You sort of skirted so I think that where you went with this on this type of situation was more of like, if you think that they're going to smash, like, you should wait on a guy like Kirk Cousins and not take like an elite quarterback. I'm saying I don't even know that you need Kirk Cousins. Even if you have those guys, like Kirk Cousins isn't putting up obviously, you can't really mix and match or to predict when he's going to have his good weeks compared to your other quarterback, and how you're going to accumulate scoring there. But even if his wide receivers do really well, still doesn't mean that he's putting up a monster season. Right.
I mean, yeah. And of course, a lot of this too is very drafter specific. And it's stuff that I've dove into a lot in my training sessions, my storyboards, etc. But yeah, there's not like drafters, it doesn't have the 300-yard passing bonus, which is a big deal for a guy like Cousins. So many of his stats in the past, DraftKings, if you play DFS, his big weeks were boosted by that extra 3 points. It's almost like getting an extra touchdown. So yeah, I think on drafters specifically, for a guy who he wasn't much of a runner before, and now he's coming off a torn Achilles, and he, you're on a site here where you don't get that bonus. I don't think it's like something you need to force or have that be like dictating how you draft. If it works out, if he falls in, if he falls in the draft and you're getting good value on him, I think it's fine. But I don't think it's like on drafters, it's not something that you have to like be anxious about or all pissed off if somebody snabs him.
Yeah. So I think we talked about with Hawkinson having likely to miss, let's say, six weeks or more. I think we definitely need a third tight end. There's really only two or three that I'm kind of even remotely excited about. So I think I'm going to grab Jelani Woods because I've got a soft spot for him. Oh, no.
Uh-oh.
Well, we took Luke McCaffrey.
Yeah, it'll happen.
All right, so now I got two Washington Commanding wide receivers on this team. I was going to grab a running back probably.
Yep. Is that was that 18 and 9? Or you got 2 picks left still, so you're good.
I got 2 picks left.
Couple more, or the one other situation somebody asked about was Bears stacks. I think we talked about that the first week or two, but he kind of touched base on it again. Caleb Williams, undrafters at least. Well, most quarterbacks ADPs have been kind of dropping, but then they've got obviously DJ Moore going at the 2-3 turn. Keenan Allen going at the 4-5 turn, Rome Odunze going at like the 6-7 turn or earlier. Yeah, I mean, you have any thoughts on Bears stacks? And then they've got, their backfield's interesting too.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me. Like, I feel like I've taken some. I'm probably under the field on Bears wide receivers, just because I feel like they get drafted high. So I don't know. If there's 3 mouths to feed, plus it's not like Cole Kmet is going away. It's not like they don't have pass catching running backs, and it's a rookie quarterback, and it's not like they've been a prolific offense. Obviously, they were working with Justin Fields before, and this is a fresh start and a new quarterback, and I don't know. I think for me, I'm taking more like the Bears running backs in later rounds. That to me, that's where I've been probably have my highest Chicago exposure. What about yourself? Where does that land for you?
Yeah, kind of the same. And I think that you talked about the running backs at the end. I think that the running backs where they're going with Swift going in the 7th or 8th round, Rashawn Johnson going in the 15th, 16th, 17th round, depending on the draft. They're actually, I'm just pulling it up right now on my site. Those two, Johnson and Swift, are my highest owned running backs right now. So I'm pretty high on the Bears offense, and you just see it like with running backs, volume and the success of the offense are kind of the two things that kind of drive the bus for how they perform. So yeah, I think Swift and Johnson, I've talked about it on our Best Ball Plus stuff more in depth, but I think those are kind of the two guys in different roles. But if the market is as confident as they seem to be based on where the wide receivers are being drafted, based on what the market is saying about them, it should be a pretty potent offense. And if that's the case, that backfield is going to have some scoring. So definitely loving Bears stacks. On DraftKings, I've got a lot of Williams with Swift plus one of the receivers type of deal.
Yeah. All right, on the clock here for 2. I kind of feel okay with my wide receiver room with 8, just because I went 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th picks of 5 straight wide receivers. I want to grab another running back I think I'm going to go Evan Hull here, which would give me three different Indy pieces between Hull, Josh Downs, and Jelani Woods. I'm considering another quarterback. I'm actually even considering Joe Flacco and just saying, what if Anthony Richardson gets hurt, which we saw him miss a lot of the season last year. I do have three different players now from Indy, so I may go that route versus JJ or Justin Fields. I think Justin Fields would have been an interesting play on this roster as well. But I don't mind going Flacco here and just, I think it's better than a 50-50 chance based on what we saw last year with Anthony Richardson, that he does miss some time. And so I think there's some value.
Contact.
No, he does not. And I think on a roster like this, where you're making bets on other Indy pieces, where I've obviously like Evan Hull is pretty much a long shot as to really even see too much time, but it's kind of what do you win when you win, as we say, a 1 week season. When you're right, what's the upside? So I don't know that I would take Joe Flacco on a roster that didn't have any other Indy pieces. But I think on a roster where I'm already betting on Jelani Woods and Josh Downs, I think it makes sense.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Somebody asked, is there currently any like undrafted or like guys that go in the last round or often go undrafted that you find yourself targeting? I think Joe Flacco would fit on that list. Is there anyone else that that sticks out to you that, well, I know one that you should say.
I can't wait to hear who I should say.
Well, that I'm expecting you to say.
Okay. Give me which position does he play?
Wide receiver plays in Texas.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, I think we talked about it last stream, actually. Like if you're betting on if you're taking Stroud, or especially if you're taking one of the three early wide receivers, to be grabbing Noah Brown, because how do they kind of hit their ceiling outcome? It's likely because one of either Nico Collins or Diggs or Dell gets hurt and misses some time. So yeah, I like Noah Brown. I think maybe this one is a little thinner, but for me, I've taken some shots on rosters where I have Jordan Love. I'm taking some shots on Bo Melton in the 20th.
Oh, here we go. Here we go.
I think that's borderline. That's a little thin with him being realistically the wide receiver 5 on a team that's going to utilize Musgrave, that will use Tucker Kraft if he's not that injured. They'll both throw to the running back. So he's probably realistically the 6th or 7th or 8th option. But to me, he's a guy that is undrafted at least half the drafts I'm in, if not 75% of the drafts, that I think is worth taking a shot on. I think for a while, I was seeing, and I think he went the 18th or 19th round in this draft. I was seeing Cody Parkinson not get drafted at tight end, likely to be the starting tight end for a team that has historically had some spike weeks out of tight end for the Rams. He was a guy that we'll say a little early on in taking the 19th and 20th round as a 3rd or 4th tight end. I don't know. Another guy, I don't know how much upside he has in terms of like spike weeks. I find myself taking Knox, Buffalo's tight end, occasionally on a draft where I need potentially a 4th tight end, and obviously tight end gets pretty thin. We've talked about Buffalo's offense a little bit and how they lost their top 2 wide receivers. Like I don't know, they may end up running more 2 tight end sets, and Knox might be more involved than he has been in the past. I think there are worse 20th round picks that you could make.
Yeah. I can get on board with those. So I've got a couple here. One is Greg Dulcich, tight end for the Broncos. I I talked about him in my training session where I focused a little more on tight ends. I think I talked about him briefly, or it might have been in Discord after when I was talking about like some other guys at the end of drafts. But I think that Broncos receiver room, there's kind of just a lot of guys, but like even Sutton he's been expected to take this leap for the last like 3 or 4 years, and it's never really happened. I think he's a fine guy, but then you've got like Mims, who disappointed last year, Troy Franklin, who fell in the draft. But I think Dulcich, he's he had a run a couple of years ago where he was pretty good for a few weeks. When he came back last year, he basically missed the whole season with injury. So just him as a tight end, who I think he actually, if you didn't go Flacco, he was going to be a guy I thought you could have taken as a fourth tight end on this roster, just with how it shook out.
Yeah, I considered it.
So
I also think I think looking back, and I don't want to interrupt your thoughts on other late guys. I think looking back, I think at the whatever it was, 17-18 turn. I don't know if I can scroll. Yeah, I think taking Jelani Woods probably a mistake. I think I probably should have taken Chig Okonkwo. Just honestly, just for the bye weeks, just because of Hawkinson's like sort of unknown status, where like if his foot is a little bit more serious than you think, maybe we get away with this because they're both week 14. But I think at quarterback and tight end, positions where you're generally taking 2 or 3 of the guys, personally, I try to avoid taking guys with the same bye week. Just in the thinner positions like that, where like because you can't afford if you're going to be a top 10 roster, which is where all the money is in all these contests, you can't afford a 0 at any position any week. Because even those 20 points or 15 points or 10 points, like as you've seen and you've gone through in your training sessions, like that's 10 points was the difference, or 4 points or something like that was the difference of moving you up from 7th to 6th and a $10,000 jump. Not trying to rub it in, but you can't take a 0. So I think to me that was a mistake. Probably should have avoided the same bye week on a thin position like that, or taken a 4th tight end instead of Joe Flacco.
Concur. My other couple late guys that we haven't talked about. One probably pretty off the board name, Johnny Wilson, rookie wide receiver for Philly. Yeah. So
week 5 bye.
What's that?
Week 5 bye.
Yeah. So he is a 6'6", 240 prospect. He played at Florida State. And he was, he runs a 4.5 40, 37-inch vertical. Like he's, for a guy his size, that's pretty impressive. He's almost like a tight end out there, like his size-wise. He moves pretty well for his size, though. But he was a 6th-round pick in the draft. But you look at, they've kind of had that void. They had Kez Watkins, they had Julio Jones, but nobody's really like taken that 3rd wide receiver spot from them, and it's basically been A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith with some Dallas Goedert has been their passing game. But I think he's a guy, he has the physical tools, and he's in like a really strong offense. I also saw, I'm not crediting whoever it was, but there was a tweet. Basically, he was, because he played with Keon Coleman for the Bills, and we're good. He played with Keon Coleman, and when they are when they were on the field together, he outproduced Coleman. Is where I was going with that. Sorry. So
Keon Coleman's going in like the 7th round or 6th round of every draft.
Yeah, and obviously I think he's going to be the plan is for him to be a bigger part of their offense, but just when you're looking at guys in the 20th round here, thinking about that upside. I know you mentioned Melton. I like that call as well. I think I'll leave it at. Oh, the one other one I wanted to say was Miles Sanders, running back for the Panthers. I think there's basically two scenarios that play out. They drafted Jonathan Brooks, who in the second round, first running back off the board, coming off a torn ACL. They have Chuba Hubbard, who kind of supplanted Sanders last year, but Sanders he's pretty much always been a pretty good back, and I'm not willing to write off previously talented players who fail in Carolina based on just the franchise's history. So just looking at like a 20th round pick and somebody who 6 to 8 weeks from now, his situation could drastically change. One of two things is going to happen. Either Brooks is slow coming back, and then Sanders is going to have a bigger role than people expect. Or I think if Brooks comes back and is cleared for training camp, I think once that happens, there's a good chance that Sanders gets either cut or traded for like a 6th or 7th round pick sort of deal. Mm-hmm. And when you consider those scenarios, does he end up in Dallas? Does he end up in Tampa Bay? Does he end up, I don't know, he could end up anywhere. Somebody could go down in training camp and then he gets traded there. I think of a few years back when CJ Anderson ended up on the Rams and had that run at the end of the season after it was actually the Panthers that let him go. I think
Broncos.
What's that?
Was it Rams or Broncos?
He was on the Broncos. That was where he started. Then he signed with the Panthers, but then they drafted McCaffrey.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
And then it was because that was like the thing. It's another thinking back to like past years. It was like McCaffrey. There was like a big duel on Twitter about, if McCaffrey could supplant CJ Anderson, which is like hilarious.
Now in hindsight.
But yeah, he basically ended up getting like cut mid-season because they were like rolling with McCaffrey, and then signed with the Rams. I believe like Gurley got hurt that year. I think it was the year that they lost in the Super Bowl to the Patriots. Yeah, they lost it was like 10-6. It was that really ugly game. Mm-hmm. But Anderson was like their running back, I believe, on that run.
Okay.
And if I'm wrong on all of that, you guys can just light me up in the comments.
Be good interaction.
That was a lot of bedtimes ago.
Yeah. Fair.
So yeah.
Well, enjoyed drafting with you again this week, my friend.
Yeah, as always, it was a pleasure. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. As we've mentioned before, if you're not already on Drafters, check it out. Use our promo code OWS when you deposit for the first time. Get that 100% match on your deposit. Check out our Bestball Plus 2024 subscription. We've got some new stuff up on the site. A couple new ones I was telling you about. One of them, Billy, coming out this week. So, a lot going on. We are going to look to profit and be up at the top of the leaderboards. Hopefully you guys are up there with us. So thanks again, and we will see you next week.